Phone call.
Hello. This is a recorded message scheduled either by you or a person in your place of work. The purpose of this message is to warn you about the dangers of recorded messages. If at any time you believe you are listening to a recorded message, please terminate it immediately and cease all flow of information from the recorded message into your perceptual sphere. Thank you, and have a pleasant day.
Bye.
Okay, on that note.
Is Stanley, without the bucket, really Stanley at all? No, no, surely not. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his... This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Well, no, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back, and so the two of them detoured through the maintenance section and walked straight ahead to the opposite door.
Ooh, an arrow.
Ooh.
Ooh, what does this button do?
Let's find out.
Oh, good, Stanley. I'm glad you found your way here. I knew you'd find this place eventually. You see, your friends and I are concerned for you, Stanley. We've come together here because we care about you very much. But it's this bucket you're carrying around everywhere. The bucket isn't even from the original Stanley Parable. It's just sequel content. We're the ones that matter, Stanley. Classic characters from the first game, like the Adventure Line and the Broom Closet. Because that's what fans want from a sequel. They want more of their favorite jokes, not this bucket that they've never seen before.
Can you go back up the elevator?
I'm the one who gave you the bucket, but you're spending too much time with it. Don't you want another story involving the Adventure Line? We could make the Adventure Line go somewhere new. Yes, yes, that's what the fans want.
Adventure Line.
Whee! Look at that weapon. Who knows where it'll go off to next? Oh, and it plays some silly music as well. Now this is what the Stanley Parable is all about. Don't you remember all those great jokes from the original dialogue? Also, Stanley is addicted to drugs and hookers. Yes, it's as classic now as it was back then. Let's do it for the fans, Stanley. Let's give them more content exactly like this. But if we want to do that, you're going to have to give something up.
Give me my music back.
You stopped the music for that?
Give me back my fucking music.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Disappointed, my day's been ruined.
Don't you get it, Stanley? We need to get rid of the bucket. That's why I'm very proud to introduce a brand new character.
The music.
This is the Bucket Destroyer.
No!
I think it'll make a wonderful new addition to the rich lore of the Stanley Parable. True, it also was not in the original game, but it's such a well-fleshed-out character with so much personality that to me, it already feels as though it's been part of the cast all along. Don't you agree? Can you guess what the Bucket Destroyer does? Surely you don't need me to spell it out for you. Go ahead now, Stanley. Say goodbye to the bucket, and then pop it into the machine when you're ready.
I'm gonna stick my dick in it.
Now listen to me. It's crucial that you give it the bucket. I don't know what the Bucket Destroyer will do if it can't destroy your bucket. Destroying buckets is all it knows. That is its singular personality trait. Sure, I can hear you saying, how does a character with only one personality trait deserve to join the pantheon of beloved Stanley Parable characters? Well, you see, if you were to really explore the Bucket Destroyer, you would see that its desire to crush buckets is so densely loaded with complexity and nuance that it's really like 10 personality traits. What other object in this game can you even say that about? The Broom Closet? Certainly not. I wonder what sort of Bucket Destroyer merchandise the fans will be clamoring for after this. Okay, the bucket destroyer is getting very upset now. You'll have to hurry and feed it. We can't get
stick
back
my
to the
dick in
classic
it.
Stanley Parable characters like the Adventure Line or the Bucket Destroyer until you crush that damn bucket. Quickly now, the fans are waiting. Do it, the fans, Stanley. Give
Do it for
the
the
fans
vine.
what they want. Hurry and...
Too late.
The Bucket Destroyer, my prized creation. You had so much potential. We were going to do such marvelous things with you, tell such spellbinding stories about you. All of it squandered now. Goodbye, new friend. For the moment in time that you were here, you were magnificent. Stanley had never seen the office this brightly lit. Was it a sign of something? He hoped it was. As Stanley lifted his bucket, he felt a connection to all buckets everywhere. This adventure, he decided, was for all of them. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
I think I know what endings still are left.
Stanley, we must move on from this
closet.
broom closet, simply because, coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
We're both very quiet right now.
We are. Then again, we're mostly just coming back to some stuff.
Yep.
So what really is there much to say?
What is comedic timing?
Shut up!
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility. The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to themselves. The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like guinea pigs. The bucket had never seen anything like this,
Let's try
and
to
it
zoom in
very
on the
nearly
protocol.
burst into tears as Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine.
Everything will be fine.
Everybody do the flop.
Everybody do the flop!
Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it didn't wish to do? What kinds
Bill
of
Cosby
things
drug
does a
the
bucket
bucket?
want to do or not want to do in the first place? These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind. No! He screamed into the bucket. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control. Never! He squeezed the bucket tighter. His one friend in the entire world.
Never
At this point,
surrender.
he could trust no one except
Good
for
grief.
the bucket. But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content.
Or bucket.
Walking, eating, working, all of it
Bucketing.
monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he and the bucket would dismantle the controls for good. Two best... But at the last second, the bucket jumped in and pressed the button to turn on the controls. Stanley
Oh, no.
gasped in horror.
What have
he
you
seen
done?
The bucket's plan all along? To take over the machine and claim the power for itself? How could the bucket have betrayed him like this? Stanley was prepared to throw the bucket away in disgust when suddenly an image appeared upon the enormous screen. Birds.
Oh, single.
Silly birds. The control buttons became active again.
Just scrolling through random birds.
One video of silly birds after another, and then it dawned on him. This wasn't a mind control facility at all. It was a facility for monitoring and surveilling silly birds all over the world. The mind controls were only a facade to disguise its true intentions. Had the bucket known this all along? Stanley marveled at the metal genius in his hand, the one who had pointed him towards this incredible discovery. Stanley and the bucket never found freedom because they spent the rest of their lives here in this place, flipping through live streams of the silliest birds in the of all the possible paths his life created. This one was surely the best. And Stanley was happy.
This one. Ring. Oh, hey, look, get down.
Valentine.
Start me bone too.
1 second.
Just wait for the recording.
I'm concerned.
What new mysteries lay in store for our bucket-loving hero? Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left. Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional... But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer
An emotional...
luck. Was it that the bucket...
Emotional damage!
Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation. Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a violent death. The door behind them was not shut. Stanley and the bucket still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking forward into a very painful death for each of them.
Wee-woo!
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket's warmth and comfort had turned out to be. To be sure, it puts the mind and the soul at ease to embrace the bucket, but what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death? This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket everywhere. Farewell, Stanley.
"Farewell, Stanley," cried the narrator, as Stanley and the bucket were led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, the bucket's life came to an end, as it was crushed violently to death.
But it's still in my hand. Stanley
It was a shame,
Parable.
the death of such a magnificent bucket. It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own way, but this one stood above the rest. It was a glorious bucket to behold.
bucket welcomes you to the grand exhibit. You are standing in the precipice of knowledge, much like a bucket itself. The human mind is frequently empty within, a carnivorous void. But through the use of an exhibit in front of you, the mind becomes full and enriched and sustained. Knowledge of the bucket and its history is the only true knowledge we really have. Will you take what you've learned here out with you into the world? Will you accept with open mind what may be challenging about the information in this exhibit? Will you change the lives of yourself and your loved ones as a result of this exhibit? Or will you turn a blind eye and continue to live as you were? Ignorance and darkness.
Can you see how arrogant it was for Stanley to take a bucket like this and to claim it for his own? Can you see the hubris that blinded him? Can you see that the bucket is far more noble than Stanley will ever be in his short life?
Farewell, bucket. Come back. Oh, it's not going any higher, is it? Stuck on the roof. That is a lot of buckets! 25 buckets. A photograph of 25... Oh, 25 buckets. I thought it was exhibit number 25. The greatest number of buckets ever captured on camera. The photographer experienced a catatonic shock for several weeks as a result of the euphoria from exposure to this many buckets at once.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That's definitely not 25.
A bucket with 2 handles. This bucket is depicted as having 2 handles. Such a design has never been created in real life, having been deemed too dangerous and recklessly experimental. Every year, dozens are put to death just for attempting it.
Are put to death or die from it?
Put to death. Inferno Bucket. A replica of the Inferno Bucket, which in the medieval era was so powerfully alluring that it drove dozens of nations to war with one another for control of it. Billions died, and yet in spite of it all, the simple fact remains, no one can control a bucket.
Except Thanos.
The stress bucket, an analogy. Worrying,
Day.
negative forecasting, negative thinking, lack of insurance, sensible haircuts. Stress, a level of water in the bucket. Vulnerability, size and strength of the bucket. Coping strategy, rest and relaxation. Doing something you enjoy, rest, relaxation. Oh wait, hold on, go back. Presented without commentary. Okay, thank you.
I should have just cut you off when you were first trying to do it, being like, it says presented without commentary. You hear that?
I do. Cave drawing. Somebody's stealing a bucket in the background! You see that up there on the top right? Someone's stealing a bucket!
Yeah.
Alright, anyway. While we know the buckets predate the existence of mankind, we do not know by how long. This cave drawing depicts early man's discovery of the practical uses of the bucket, by which time the bucket had already likely been around for several millennia. Notice in these drawings how the bucket is allowed itself to be used, having judged humanity to be worthy of its treasures.
No man can own a bucket, and certainly not a bucket as dazzling to behold as this one. It is man who should kneel before the bucket.
The hanging bucket. This piece symbolizes the necessary relationship between bucket.
Relationship.
Alright, fine. This piece symbolizes a sexual relationship.
I was half expecting it to fall.
However clear our grasp of the bucket may be, there is yet that is always out of reach. This distance, inevitably, is for our own good. Take the bucket.
But this isn't my bucket.
Take the bucket.
But this isn't my bucket.
Can you even take the bucket?
What
Answer
is
that question.
comedic timing?
But there is something we can do. Something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong.
We can unfuck the bucket.
Let Stanley die. Let him be crushed by the machine. Don't reset the game. Don't give him another opportunity to run off with another beautiful bucket.
And
We can
makes
save the
sweet
world's
love to it
buckets
as
from
well.
their treatment as tools and implements if only we let Stanley die together. The bucket shall take its place as ruler, as leader, as commander of a new world, a new vision.
Bucket got squished.
Okay, if I think right, there's only one thing left to do.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
There's no bucket, right? I didn't grab the bucket, correct?
Yeah.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open
It's all right, I
buckets,
was
was
yawning.
not the correct way to the meeting room, and
Interesting.
Stanley knew it perfectly
For what
well.
we have to do, I
Perhaps
can't.
he wanted to stop by
without
the
gra- I
employee
can't
lounge
do
first,
this
just
with
to
the
admire
bucket.
it.
Okay.
The lounge was grand, majestic, perhaps too, but eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
Fuck you.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago. Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you. What? Really? I'm in the middle of something. Do you have zero consideration for others? Are you that convinced that I want something bad to happen to you? Why, I don't know how to convince you of this, but I really do want to help you, to show you something beautiful. Look, let me prove it. And there it is. The last Stiggly Wiggly. Savor this.
Stiggly Wiggly.
This
Let
is
me
a
prove
real
it.
accomplishment.
The last
This is doing
Stiggly
something just for the sake of doing it. Where so many people expect to be rewarded for the most trivial achievements, you've insisted that a job well done is its own reward. I would tell you that I'm proud of you for collecting them all, but that would be like a reward, and we can't have that. So, instead I'll just say, it's done. We're all done here. And now we can go to whatever the hell you were doing before you hunted for figurines. Now listen carefully.
No, I don't think I will.
It's taking the while to load, huh?
Yeah, it did.
Stanley, I'm sorry, but I have to put a pause on things. It's those figurines, those figlets. I haven't stopped thinking about them since you nabbed every last one. Wasn't it just the most intrinsically fulfilling moment of your entire life? Didn't it fill you to the brim with inner richness?
Flashback
I
alert.
know we're supposed to be telling a story, but won't you please indulge me with one more trip back to the memory zone? I would love nothing more than to revisit the figurines. Just one more time.
Oh, yeah, this.
Now remembering when
Wait.
Stanley found the collectibles.
I see you.
Here's where it all began. The first collectible. Back then, we had no idea of how many of them we'd find. Sure, it said 6 right there on the screen, but how could we know for certain? We were so innocent. We'll never be like that again, Stanley.
Take it. Take it, run.
And here was a second Stanlerine. You found this one all on your own, just by poking around in the warehouse. You did that, Stanley. I'll be honest, Back then I had no faith in you to find any of them, let alone 6. But you continue to surprise me in all sorts of mundane, unremarkable ways.
Thanks.
Okay, let's do a little quiz. Which of these rooms was the room you found your 3rd mini Stan? Can you remember?
That was the boss's bathroom.
Let's say, hopefully you remember this.
Hey, that's exactly right. It was here in the boss's bathroom. It was the 3rd one. You picked it up, and then after that, you had 3 of them.
We had 9 of
I'm
them.
glad these moments are so crystal clear in your memory, but I shouldn't be surprised. After all, science tells us that it's impossible to forget your 3rd time
9th
doing
time
anything.
of doing anything.
Let's see, what came next? Oh yes, we found a Figley in this pink room. Oh well, I can't actually say I remember being in this room, but it's here in the memory zone, so it must have happened.
Nothing's creepy about this, is it?
Nope. It's all just completely normal.
This was the 5th mini Stan, and this one was really something special. It was under the stairs. I remember it so clearly. In fact, because this one is particularly special to me, I made a little video to commemorate the occasion. Enjoy.
Good grief!
This is like when we found the 2nd one.
Takes you back, doesn't it? I spent a lot of time making that video, but it was 8 minutes I wouldn't have spent on anything else.
8 minutes? What if I go this way? Nothing.
But I could have told you that.
And then, Stanley, then we came to the last collectible, the final figurine, right
12th.
here by the red and blue doors. This memory is the most distinct and clear in my mind, perhaps because it was the one that happened more recently than all the others. Who can truly say how the mind works? All I know is that this is the moment where you picked up a Figley and I thought to myself, yes, that's all of them. They're all collected. It was a moment unlike any other. Except for the other moments picking up figurines, which it was exactly like.
Uh-oh.
And then there was no more, because we've
The
caught
end
up
is
to the
never
present
the end,
moment.
is never the
Nothing
end,
left to
is
do
never
but
the
move
end.
onward into the future. Goodbye, memory zone. No, I'm not done. I'm not ready to move on. Stop the loading screen. Isn't there some way we can stay here, keep enjoying these figurines? Let's just go backwards. We'll do the memory zone again from the opposite direction. See how that feels. Okay, yes, the room with the red and blue doors. I remember this. I must say, of all the figurines we looked at in our initial tour of the memory zone, this one is the
13.
most distinct and clear in my mind. Let's keep going. I want more.
You said go backwards, so
I don't think you meant like this.
why not? Content.
And here's where I made that video. Don't you remember the video we watched?
He's not playing the video in reverse.
Yes, I love that video. Still don't remember the pink room, Stanley. Still no memory of this one. Good room, though. A solid room.
As opposed to a liquid room.
These really were a treat to hunt down. You know, if there had been any kind
You
of
weren't looking
reward
backwards
for
at it?
finding all of these, it really would have muted the intrinsic joy of collecting them. I'm very glad we resisted the
You
temptation.
said go backwards with
Next
it,
one.
not pick it up backwards. Worth a shot.
Wasted bullets.
Spin the wheel.
Spin the wheel!
This was our second Figley. Don't you
Presley.
remember? Yes, I remember it too. The past is truly a wonderful thing. Why does anyone ever choose to leave it? Keep going. This is it, the very first one we found in the exhibit where I introduced you to the figlarines. Oh, I want more memories, Stanley. I want to keep going. What else is there? What came before this?
It wasn't this.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, way before, though.
Look, it's the terrible new content that we were originally sold on. I remember hating it back then, but time does put a rosy filter on everything. In fact, I dare say I'm actually quite fond of it now. Look how much fun the past is. I want more. More memories.
I still can't jump though.
More memories. Got tired of walking backwards, did you?
Oh, yes. The two doors! Who could have forgotten that? A classic memory, this one.
They don't lead like that. This is my
And before
office.
everything else, there was your office.
What about the bucket?
Is there anything else? Was there something that came before your office?
The
There's
menu?
something I feel I can remember. I can remember.
The main menu.
Yes, I'm remembering something now. I remember before this whole story got started. Back then I was different. I used to make big decisions. I was passionate. I was skeptical. I weighed each decision with profound thoughtfulness. And then somewhere along the way, I stopped making decisions. I became lazy, and I came up with a character named Stanley to do my thinking for me. He would make the decisions. He would decide which way to go. I would cheer him on as he collected figurines for no reason. Why did I invent Stanley? Was I lonely? Yes, perhaps that's it. Perhaps I needed to imagine I had companionship. And Stanley really did make for a wonderful companion, even if he was a fiction. But I suppose it's grown old. I want to think for myself again. I want to go back to how it used to be. Yes, I can be on my own again. I can do it. I'll be stronger this time. I'll take care of myself. I don't need Stanley anymore. Oh, but he truly was so much fun to play with. You know what? Since we're in the memory zone, how about one more good memory? Let's go back just once and give Stanley one more run of the office, and then I'll retire him for good. I did enjoy telling his story so very much. Okay, here we go. This is the story of a man named Stanley.
One more story run, see what happens. If anything happens.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of
And if nothing really
disbelief,
happens, we'll just cut
Stanley
to the
decided to
video.
go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Watch, you complete this run, it just After the run, it just completely deletes your
Staring
entire
into his
save
manager's office,
data.
Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What ducks? Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible, he didn't even have a single minute to just let the narrator talk. That kind of anxiety isn't healthy, so he relaxed for a few moments with some calming New Age music. Feeling soothed and rejuvenated, Stanley calmly walked forward into the opened passageway. Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Let there be light!
Lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
Will he have the will to find out?
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing. This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly?
Makes sense.
No.
That makes sense to me.
He refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own
Okay,
life
fine.
in someone else's control? Never. It was unthinkable. Wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly
What about the
blind to the world?
Controlled by the bucket.
But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy or sad or content.
Or bucket.
Walking, eating, working.
Shitting.
All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that...
Stanley decided to cut off the narrator.
Piece of shit.
blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over? Yes. He had won. He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but
It was
happiness.
Bucket.
Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door.
Bucket?
Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
What is comedic timing?
Alright, well, I guess we left the bucket behind.
He didn't retire Stanley. That bitch.
Fucking liar!